Hey boys, today we're going to be talking about culture and why you should avoid it. So young David would see all of his friend groups, everyone around his age, every day at lunch talk about, pooling girls and, getting pussy, or just the different things that they were doing with their girlfriends, or, the girls that they were getting and the different times they got caught. It made him feel quite left behind and really inadequate. President David was given the gift of COVID. While the pandemic has all in all been a very negative thing and had a very negative impact on a lot of people's lives, it is the primary reason President David was able to, transform himself. The pandemic allowed him an opportunity to take time away from the cultural norms, or giving David pretty much the necessary time for whatever reflection he would need to shape his future. Now, the pandemic, I believe, will be looked back upon as a very extreme but somewhat positive event, okay? It caused many people's tragic death and a lot of people's losses, and of course inflation and oil prices and blah blah blah. But for many, the hardship and struggle introduced by the ensuing chaos that was sparked by the inflation and pandemic overall will directly be responsible for the making of many, many great people that will come up to bring change to our world. Now, it threw society for a loop, and it has awoken a lot of people to, new realities. Maybe you were one of the people that didn't quite feel like you made the most of this opportunity, we'll call it. This 1.5 year long halt of modern society. But it's not too late to understand the fundamental lessons that COVID brought along with it, and the lessons that shaped the men that you're currently seeing rise up. These lessons were, in fact, a fact far before COVID, ever existed, right? But only through a major event or a major disaster or something, a pandemic, could we all really come to highlight and understand these things better, right? I want to be clear here. I'm not saying that the pandemic was a happy, jolly old time. What I am saying is simply that there are multiple people who have grown and shown their strength and perseverance through their struggles and just the overall hardship brought on by COVID. What I'm doing here is I'm celebrating the success and accomplishments of these strong, achieve, what's the word I'm looking for here? The accomplishments of these strong individuals, as well as reflecting on, the potential value and the possible, valuable knowledge that only a severe event such as COVID could bring. Alright, now, what I've learned is that the word culture is essentially just peer pressure in disguise. Alright, now that might sound crazy, but culture is just a pretty dressed up way, in a socially acceptable way of saying you're, peer pressure and coercion. What does that mean? You've probably heard the phrase survival in numbers, right? That is a real biological cognitive process that takes place in the most ancient and primitive parts of our brain, the limbic system, or more commonly known as the lizard brain. when we see a bunch of people doing something, we have an inclination to do the same thing because it means that we fit into the crowd, and that, in turn, we seem to have an increased chance of our survival. Even though it's just through our society and technology, cultural norms, even though they've all seemed to evolve more than exponentially over the last few thousand years, our brains are still the same, more or less, if not extremely similar to our caveman counterparts. And we've built a lot of what we have today, or all of what we have today, off of the same basic limbic system that has kept us alive for all these millions of years. It's kept us evolving for the past tens of thousands of years. And as a result, our brain is, still simplifying as many of the same common inputs and stressors that we get today, the same way it would 1,000 years ago. It's just we're getting different artificial, superficial ways of getting these stressors. Well, what does that mean? Why does this matter, and what is culture? Well, because culture seems to change so rapidly with circumstance, how can we accurately describe what culture is? What is it? Well, Google defines it as culture is an umbrella term which encompasses the social behavior and institutions and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, and the habits of the individuals in these groups. Culture is often originated from or attributed, I cannot speak, you guys, to a specific region or location. So culture is not something that is, in case you didn't understand any of that, don't worry, I didn't either at first. Culture is not something that can be created out of intention, or it's not something that is created out of intention, but rather it's something that is the repetition of a necessary action. Okay, certain aspects of our culture aren't the way they are because simply someone decided that it was the best way that it could be done or should be done, but rather it was based off of a unique set of challenges that circumstance, religion, race, sex, geographical location, pre-existing culture, etc. came along with. Now, to give you an example, why did we start shaking hands? Why did we start feminism? Why did we start the slavery / anti-slavery / racism? And why did we not stand next to other guys at urinals? And with the slavery, why did we start slavery to begin with? Right? Likely you don't have specific answers to any of the above, right? And you consider it common sense as to why these things happened the way they happened, or are the way they are. But all of what I mentioned above have rather long histories and, reasoning and thought put behind them that goes unknown to most of us, despite the fact that we engage nearly every day with these parts of our culture. Now, fast food, energy drinks, 5-hour energy boosts, gas station foods are all subparts of some categories or subcategories of our culture as well. Maybe not directly tied to us, but it's socially acceptable and even normalized to down a few cups of coffee laced with creamer before work every day, right? To shoot a 5-hour energy shot before you get into the highway. In some cases, truck drivers would use meth, right? Or to stop at the gas station and pick up some, unfilling snacks because you've got the sudden case of the munchies. Speaking of the sudden munchies, cravings are another part of our culture. Fast food, dieting, and eating as well. Eating disorders, should I say. What goes with our yummy food? Games. That goes pretty well. What goes well with games? Friends? Hell yeah, now we're talking. We're getting onto something. Throw in some energy drinks? Weed? Substance abuse? We're on the fast track to having a good time here. Now, there's a lot of those of us on self-improvement know the issues of everything I mentioned above. Even if we don't have the same exact scientific data to point at and or millions of hours of reading to gain an expertise on the subject, we still have a general idea hey, yeah, those don't sound very good for me. And the funny part is, I didn't even mention social media. But that's one of the biggest things that, has only exacerbated everything that I'd mentioned. It's responsible for the mass and rapid sharing of ideas, right? And similar to the role that enzymes play in the body, if you want to get nerdy, it speeds up all the reactions and developments, right? Now, my whole argument here is that we shouldn't allow ourselves to be so coerced into doing these degenerate activities simply because it is culture or the norm. Differentiate yourself. Don't be afraid to stand out. Think about your dream figure. Do they not stand out? Do you regularly see super fit, 10 out of 10 people with 10 out of 10 lives, 10 out of 10 homes, 10 out of 10 relations? Do those people not stand out? Does that person who started a new successful company not kind of stand out? Does the guy making the headlines in the news not stand out? Likely you want to be that guy, or you wouldn't mind being that guy. You're going to have to stand out at some time. If you're at a party or hanging out with some friends, don't be afraid to say no to those degenerate activities because, you know where you want to go and you know how you want to get there. And you know what you need to accomplish. Don't let others dissuade you from the path because they're trying to make you feel weird. There's more that I want to say and that I could cover on this post, but I think this is a good stopping point. Stay strong, everyone, and stay on task. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment and check out my Reddit on r/improvement, holistic improvement.